welcome back. I am solo today. Yes, Pablo Bailey is under the weather, so you just have me today, so I apologize for all that. But welcome to the official EFFL podcast number 4040. So on behalf of myself and the entire EFFL team, including Pablo, we want to thank you for helping us get to this milestone kind of thing. But anyways, Extreme FFL is where you want to go. And as always, we want to thank our year-long sponsors, 123go.io and also Tabby Entertainment. Well, it is Super Bowl week. Today is Tuesday. Got a few more days until the big game. And we're going to touch on that just a little bit. No offense to anybody who's an Eagle or a Chiefs fan. I'm just kind of tired of you two. So we'll touch on a little bit, but then we're going to introduce what might be a small little thing for 2025 coming to you on our website. But stick around for one quick second and I'll be right back. All right. So, yes, it is obviously Super Bowl week, and we have a big game coming up between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, and all of the pundits have put in their comments, and I guess maybe because this platform allows me to do that too. But again, like I said, I'm a little bit tired of the Eagles and the Chiefs. I've been kind of jumping off of the Chiefs bandwagon all season long, so I can't be a hypocrite and jump back on it. So I'm going to stay off it, and I'm going to put my money, maybe physically true money, on the Eagles to win. I think with what we saw in the playoffs so far for the Eagles, Saquon is almost unstoppable, and I don't care about Chris Jones and the Chiefs D-line. I just think that's going to be the big selling point on me, at least, picking the Eagles to win. I have them 25 to probably 18, something like that. So I think it'd be like a 7-point spread. I think the Eagles is going to hold on the ball and run. Hurts is going to do, I'm going to say, 4 of those tush pushes and probably 2 for a touchdown. So it is what it is. But again, Eagles Chiefs, good luck to both of you. I got a little bit disheartened by the Lions, so but let's just go ahead and I'm a little tired of the whole Taylor Swift thing also. So let's get past that and let's move on to what you might be expecting in the changes for the 2025 Extreme FF. And I can call it Extreme FFL. This is going to be called the Extreme Fantasy Football because we're making some substantial changes. And we mentioned this a few times over the past couple episodes, but I want to talk a little bit more about one particular aspect of it and coming up soon. I will be, myself and my buddy Joe, co-founder for the Extreme FF League, we're going to be in Las Vegas for the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association Conference in Las Vegas early, about 2 weeks from today. And on the stage, I will be giving a 3-minute elevator pitch about what to expect from the Extreme Fantasy Football in 2025. And we are changing completely on what we had for 2024. For instance, we're going to go to a subscription basis where we'll have 3. One's a rookie, one's a pro, and one's a Hall of Fame levels of subscriptions. The rookie one is free. The pro is only $50 per year, and the Hall of Fame is only $100 per year. And what you get is some varying differences in information and things, and we'll get into more of that as we go further. But we are looking to become a year-round information source on all things NFL and truly hit on all formats of fantasy football. So I want to address the latter part here today. There are probably, way more than a dozen, but dozens of different fantasy football formats that are out there. And there is no way that somebody can research all of them, because some of them are just between a few friends. Some of them are super big, like a best ball kind of thing. So what I did is I have a good sized list of some of the more common, or even a couple that are relatively brand new formats that are out there. And I want to kind of dig into just a little bit about each one. And then as we progressively get into the year and on our new website, we'll break them down a little more. We might do some strategies, some tips on our experiences, because a lot of us have played in multiple types before, but also just kind of thought of how the world of fantasy football has evolved from what it was in the early 80s when I first started playing it to 2025 now. So 40 and change years later, here we are in this whole new world of what fantasy football is. So let's get into that right now. All right, so let's start. So I'm going to have Paul play that cool little music we have. There we go. See, that's pretty cool. So thanks, Pablo, because I know Pablo, although he's not here, he will be doing the editing of this and then the posting. So thank you again, Pablo, for that. So most of the fantasy football leagues that are out there are based on a standard or traditional league with variances and nuances thereof. So, and some of them are complicated, some of them aren't. So there's a lot of different rules, and each commissioner, whether he or she does it on he or she own, or as the league got together and voted, and then the commissioner makes the scoring or the roster sizes or requirements or whatever else, then the little nuances of that particular league is, somewhere it gets made. But typically most of the fantasy football leagues are out there have a scoring metrics that is very similar to what you would find on a standard or traditional league. So, we could sit here and go through those, and you have one or two quarterbacks, you have two or three running backs, two or three wide receivers, one or two tight ends. You may have individual defensive players, maybe you don't. You may have a super flex, maybe you don't. So they're all things that each league can change for whatever they want. But the scoring is typically done the same as a standard league. So I'm not going to dwell on those as much, but I want to get into keepers, dynasties, auction leagues, best ball leagues, guillotine leagues, survivor, generations, blitz, our extreme blitz, and our extreme exchange. So those are the leagues I want to touch on a little bit here today, and then we'll expound on each of those as our episodes go forward. And again, you will see these also on our new website, probably coming into fruition end of March, and definitely by April 1st. So let's talk about keeper versus dynasty and some minor differences in there. Again, the scoring is kind of the same. The format, the scoring, the roster sizes are the same, but how a keeper and a dynasty typically differ. Now, I've heard dynasty leagues called legacy leagues, which is kind of the same thing. So, but a keeper league is typically you get to keep one or two. I even heard one of us three, but usually one or two players at the end of the season. So whatever your roster is at the end of the year, before the following year's draft, you can go ahead and you can keep one or two, again, maybe three, but usually one or two players from your roster. And typically, most keeper leagues have a cost, not necessarily a monetary cost, but a draft pick cost for who you're keeping. I'm in a keeper league right now, and we get to keep one player. And normally to that is you keep the player that that you want, but the round that you drafted them is you do not get a pick in that round in the upcoming year. So it might make sense to save Saquon Barkley, but you probably picked him in the first round. So if you do that, you wouldn't get a first round pick this year. So is it really the best move to keep a Saquon Barkley? What you're going to typically find as some advantages to that is to find that diamond in the rough, the guy who's on the breakout season next year, who maybe you drafted in the 10, 11, 12, 20th round, whatever it is, and you got the solid starter at a late round pick. So that's typically how a keeper league works. Now, the league that I'm in, for every year that you keep them, you sacrifice a round more earlier, I guess. Bad English there. But so you sacrifice a round above what they were chosen. And then the next year above that, you keep them again and again and again. So because some cases, what's going to happen is you may find that superstar that you got in round 17. And if you just keep them having a 17th round pick being that player, it may not be really fair over a long run. So they make it to a 16, a 15, a 14, and a 13 rounds, however long you want to keep them. So keeper leagues are typically the scoring the same way as you're going to find a traditional league, but at the end of the season, you get to keep one or two players typically. Now, moving to the dynasty, I have been in a couple of dynasty leagues that, again, have a little different here. So, again, the nuances and the fine details are up to the commissioner and the members of that league, how they want to structure the league. But I have been in the dynasty league where you can keep as few as 7 players, or I've been in one where you keep all the players. And I'm sure there's some other variances along the way too. So a dynasty and a keeper, they both keep players. The difference is the number of players you get to keep. Now, if you're playing a dynasty league, most of the drafts are going to be focusing on the rookies coming out. Possibly you heard about a second or a third year player who's now going to be a starter. So that may be the way it is. But dynasty leagues are strong, young rookies. Or if you need have a chance to win this year, you go for that veteran kind of move. The problem with a dynasty league in my aspect, and I want to play another one again. So if you are out there and you have a dynasty league spot available, I don't care where you live, I'll jump in and do it because I really want to get back into it. I haven't done one in probably 15, 20 years. So I wouldn't mind doing it again. But the problem I have is that if you have a bad team, it takes a few years to get into it, to get your team built up, whether you do it by drafts, whether you do it by trades, whatever it is, waiver wires you get to keep, however it is, it can be a problem if your team is not very good. So getting into a dynasty league, taking a spot from a person who had a dynasty league team in the previous year, if they're not in it, good chance the league, probably their team isn't very good. So you may have to spend 2 or 3 or 4 years building up that team. And in that time frame, you may get bored. So that's the only problem that I have with a dynasty league keeping 7 or more or all the players, is that a really good team is going to be good for a long time. Let's just say the Kansas City Chiefs. They're good for a long time. And if you are not good, you may get bored with that. So those are the challenges I have with a dynasty league versus a keeper league. But otherwise, the scoring is typically the same. There's not really any difference between those two things. On auction, another fun, if you haven't ever done an auction league, I recommend doing it because it's a way different nuance and way different philosophy and strategy. And everybody has their own strategies and how that plays out. So whatever the auction um, rules for a league are, the commissioner is going to give somebody either physical, let's just say monopoly money, or put it on a board and you deduct it as you go, but some dollar amount to start off with. And then somebody, whatever the commissioner decides, it could be a random draw, it could just be alphabetical, but however it is, some player is going to get nominated to be bid on. Now, most auction leagues do not have every single possible player to be auctioned off. That would take forever. So let's just say it's the top 15, top 20, whatever it is, top 20 quarterbacks are names are put in the hat and then they're drawn out, or some random number. However the league does it, that's what happens. So now you call off Josh Allen. You have requirements based on the roster. It could be, again, the one quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, whatever else it may be. So you have to look at, all right, well, if I have to buy 10 spots and I have $100 to spend, do I want to spend $10 per person, or do I want to spend 19 on one and 1 on someone else? That's the strategy that you get, and you start auctioning. Now, I've never done a silent auction before, but I have heard that there is a silent auction league too, where you just simply write in your bid. This is much faster. You write in your bid, and simply the highest bid gets it. Either way, having an auction is fun because you can start seeing who your competitors, who they have, how much money they have left, and however that happens, it plays out, ends up being pretty cool. Now, I have heard when I played in my auction league years and years ago, after the draft, after the auction was over, anybody who was not bid on before comes a waiver wire pickup, like a normal waiver wire transaction would be. But I also have heard some where there is a quarter, 50 cents, $1, and that could actually even be physical, real money to pick up somebody also and make it a little bit more fun, have a little bit more of a skin in the game. So for every waiver pickup you get, you got to pay $1 in real life, and then that money at the end can be part of a party or give to the prize fund, whatever it may be. But auctioning is a interesting and a fun way. Way different than normal, but it's actually pretty cool. Now, end of the season, all the players go back into the pool, and then next year, so it's considered a redraft. Not typically you're going to find a dynasty or a keeper auction league. I guess they may exist, but that's kind of how auctions work. If you haven't been in one, get one. And if you do have one and you want me to get in, I will happily join in on your auction league too. Another kind of a cool format that is way different, and I have not played in any of these formats yet, but I think it would be amazing to do it. So I'm offering it out there again, like I have been. I'll join in. But have you ever heard of a guillotine league? I have done some research on this, and what typically happens is on a guillotine league, you play head to head like you normally would, and the scoring is typically the same as you would find on a traditional league, and the roster sizes are based on whatever the league has specified. So that's not going to change at all. But what's really cool is on the head to head game, whoever is the winner of that game gets some options. They can either swap a starting player from their team for a starting player of the same position on the losing team, and they actually get to swap players. That is a version of it. Or you can guillotine any player on the losing team that you want. So, which either way, it's kind of really cool. Now, that guillotine player can be taken out of the league completely. It can become a possible waiver wire thing. It could be 6 weeks later, a waiver wire thing. Imagine like a big injury. So maybe that player gets guillotined and put on the can't play for 6 weeks kind of thing, but still on that team that lost. Depending on how the league wants to structure it, the guillotine leagues are actually sound like a lot of fun. So not that it's a matchup kind of thing where you can sit here and say, well, I'm going to do this, do that. But if you are the winner and you have the ability to take somebody from that team, again, it will cost you your starter or a starter from your team in the same position, or you can just simply guillotine that player. That's really pretty cool. So I would love to have that as an opportunity to play. So if you haven't done a guillotine league, like I haven't done one myself, but I would love to do one. So if you haven't done one, do it. And if you have one to be in, then let me know. You can get a hold of me again on extremeFFL.com. All right. So we've covered Dynasty, we've covered Keeper, we covered Auction, and covered Guillotine. Quickly, let's talk about Best Ball. Best Ball is fun because you can get into 50, 100 leagues if you want at any given time. Best balls are the old-fashioned set it and forget it marketing strategy that we had back in the 70s and 80s. But when you come to Best Ball, you draft the players that you want, and then you don't touch them for the rest of the season. So you can get into multiple leagues because there's no interaction between the players. There's no, or the teams, the owners. So you just draft who you want to draft. And then if I have 3 quarterbacks on my team, each week when they play, the computer will look at whoever had the best ball, whoever had the highest scoring of those 3 players would be the player on my starting lineup. And then running backs, receivers, tight ends, and whatever positions the league has chosen, that's how your lineup gets set. So you don't do a thing, literally draft and stop. So I know people who have been in dozens, and probably even hundreds of best ball leagues. They are fun, a little different. You have to look at, hey, injuries are huge. Backup players are huge. So those are kind of things, a different strategy, which is kind of what makes fantasy football in its own right cool, because you have so many different formats and therefore different strategies of what the style you want to keep. And even within the style, scoring, roster size, whatever options and other nuances and variances you have, that's kind of what's cool about playing in a fantasy football. So if you have not gotten into a best ball league, go ahead and get into it because they are really cool. Next, we have Survivor leagues. This is more or less picking a team per week, not a player situation. So most Survivor leagues that are out there is you're allowed to pick, you have to pick one winning team each week, actual NFL winning team by week. And there's no point spread. It's just head to head. Once you pick that team, you can't pick them again. So you pick a team to win in week 1. Let's say they win. Now you go to week 2, and then week 3, and then week 4 and week 5. But along the way, you cannot re-pick the same team or a previous team that you already chosen before. And I have seen, or I've heard about Survivor leagues that you get points as you go, winning and losing. I've heard people that once you lose, you're out. So depending on how the specifics and the nuances of the actual league itself is laid out or are laid out, that's up to the league itself. But can you pick this one winning team, a different team every week for 18 weeks? If you could do that, congrats. So survivor leagues are kind of fun, a little different. You're not looking at fantasy football as much. You're just kind of doing a quick, hey, this is going to win. You don't need to worry about players. You don't need to worry about auctions or injury reports or any of that kind of stuff. You just pick the winner, one winner per week for 18 weeks. Sounds simple? It's really not. So, and then I also want to talk about, well, we had these guys on our podcast here a few months ago, and it's the Generations Football League. And I really want to thank those guys there, and I'm looking forward to seeing them again in Las Vegas in 2 weeks, because I feel what they have is something that is so cool and it makes sense. And why didn't I think of it in the past? So quickly, and again, their podcast with us is back probably in week 9 or 10 or whenever it was exactly. So it's a while back there. But Generations Fantasy Football is taking any player, I believe, from 1970 through 3 seasons ago. And as long as that player has 3 seasons under their belt, they can be drafted. So what happens, well, in a paraphrase their story, back to COVID, it was so difficult to have an organized fantasy football league because players weren't playing. You didn't really know until the day of, and it was really kind of tough to manage. So they decided to do a random game from the past for any of these particular players. So you would go in and let's just say you want to pick Joe Montana. So Joe Montana is your player, and he has between this year and this year, and somewhere in that time frame, the computer is going to randomly pick year 4, week 3 of Joe Montana's career, and those stats from year 4, week 3 would be what's used for the points for Joe Montana. So what's really cool is you can play a season really quickly. You can play a season in a matter of hours if you really needed to. So because you're already playing games that are already played. And in fact, one of the guys made a comment on the air here is that he had Aaron Rodgers. Unfortunately, one of the first games he had was Aaron Rodgers in the 2023 first game season. And we all know what happened to Aaron Rodgers in that point. So of all the possible games that Aaron Rodgers played, he just randomly chose the 2023 week 1 game. And of course, there is a problem. But it's a great difference and a nice little nuance, nice little twist to playing this. And I would like to even think that if there's a way to make a specific year, let's just go back to 1989 and play a 1989 fantasy football league using Generations Fantasy Football. So that would be cool. You get to revisit those players, Eric Dickerson and Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, those kind of things. Those are the kind of players that you kind of want to see again. So if you haven't got into that Generations Fantasy Football League, I don't know the exact website, but they do have an app, and you can just search it. Again, it's pretty cool. And I'm looking forward to what they have next, because they could actually do this with any sport. So I know they've talked about having other sports. Imagine playing Generations baseball and all this kind of stuff. So you have that ability because you're just picking players from the past. So it's kind of cool little thing. Check them out. And then, of course, we have our leagues, the Extreme Blitz and the Extreme Exchange. Our Blitz League, we're naming it. So we had these Platinum Leagues and all those kind of other leagues we've had in the past. We're renaming them to the Extreme Blitz, which is our core product here. and we won't go into a lot of detail of that. But if you haven't played in our Blitz League, I feel you're going to like this, because one of the things that we've done is we've eliminated long-term injuries. And we all know the stories of any player you want who's played on your team who got hurt. Well, we don't have those on Extreme Blitz. So you can dig into more of that on any of our podcasts for the past 39 weeks. And then our newest addition to our family here is the Extreme Exchange. That's kind of cool. It's a stock market like little thing. So players have a price beginning of the season. You have a big portfolio worth of money. You can spend as you want. There are no roster or position requirements. You can buy anybody. You can buy any team you want. And then as they perform on the field, their value will go up or down, and you simply buy or sell. And at the end of 18 weeks, whoever has the highest portfolio wins. So anyways, so there is a little bit of the background of some of the ideas, and we're going to touch on going forward in our 2025 season of what the Extreme Fantasy Football can offer to you. And if you have a league out there that you feel is different and has a different little nuance or little twist, even if it's a standard league or if it's an IDP or a super flex, whatever the standard kind of stuff may be, but if you have a cool little twist to it, let us know. Hit us up over here at extremeFFL.com, and we'll get into that. So anyways, I want to thank everybody again for me listening to me ramble on about this for the past 31 and change minutes. And I apologize, I don't have Pablo here to help break up my talking. But as you see right over there, all that stuff is very important for us. So I'm going to ask Paul to play the outro music. But it's very important to us that you do all of this stuff, like, listen, follow, comment, ring that bell, because we are trying to make this more fun and better for you. And any kind of input you may have works for us. So that's great. So on behalf of everybody at the Extreme FFL team, I want to thank you for a fantastic 2024 season. Looking forward to some great things in 2025. And hit us up. Looking forward to seeing you down the road. And as I always say, when life gives you a chance, you make it happen. Peace.